Life will never stay the same. And if you don't evolve, you end up getting stuck. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Welcome back to my 100-day walk to consistency and health. We are on day number 84. And today we're talking about how do you evolve? How do you change? How do you grow? How do you adjust when life changes? There are certain circumstances, certain things that we're going to get into that are going to be different. And things are going to look different for us. We're going to want different things. We're going to be heading in different directions, and sometimes we're going to have to pivot. And I'm talking about today, how do we make sure that we are evolving and we are staying relevant and that we're staying on task? Hey, welcome back. This is day 84, as I said. Remember, every day that you show up, every day that you're here, you are adding another piece to the puzzle that helps you be consistent, that helps you be self-confident, helps you be stronger, and helps set you up for success. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll see you on the walk. Over the last several days, we've been talking about legacy and passing on to those around us and behind us, how to do that effectively, and how that is really an integral part of our success. And life will change. Life will adjust. We talked about the fact that the only constant is change, right? Well, as life changes, as your circumstance change, as we get older, as we actually begin achieving some of those things that we're checking off, then our goals, our ideas are going to evolve. And the question is, how do we incorporate that into the plan that we have? Because if we don't, we end up thinking sometimes that we're failing, that we're off track, that we're off path. And that can set us up for even greater disappointment and even greater challenges. Because if you're kind of like me, if you have a path, if you have a plan, if you have a list of things that you're supposed to be doing, and for some reason that's not going well, or you find that you're not able to accomplish some of that, the tendency is to think that we are failing, or that we're not being efficient, or whatever the things is that we tell ourselves, which is why it's so important to evaluate, to be able to look at what we're doing, process it, and then make some informed decisions about what it really means, right? That's one of the great things about journaling and the things that we're talking about in terms of being able to record and think through the keystone principles that we're doing. Having said that, there are times when, as we evaluate, if we've done a good job of setting up our goals, setting up our why, that North Star statement, and we are constantly evaluating, we will evaluate and we will find that, yeah, I got to make a change. Not because I'm not efficient, not because I don't have the capacity for that, but my destination has shifted a little bit because my life circumstance has changed. And being able to understand that and being able to work that into what we do is so important. Otherwise, we can become depressed, we can become anxious, we can begin working in spaces that throws us all out of kilter. And we do not want that to happen. And so it's important that we continue to understand that your life is going to change, it's going to evolve. Whether it's some medical thing that happens, it's some physical limitation or physical change. Maybe you've gotten older, maybe you've gotten married, maybe you have children, maybe whatever the life change is, all of those things will impact what you do and what your priorities are at a particular time, and even sometimes what the ultimate goal is going to be. Because as you learn, as I've been saying, as you learn and as you evolve, you will find that your priorities, your goals will shift, your values. Let me say that. So take priorities and goals away. Your values will change. And so your North Star statement may shift. And you find yourself wanting other things that are not wrong, but they're just different from the things that you wanted at one point. And so now, as we're setting up these goals, as we are doing our SMART specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. As we're going through that process, the pathway has now shifted, not because we are having difficulty, but because our ultimate goal has shifted a bit. I hope that makes sense. And as we go through this one, I want you to really be thinking about where you are and what your priorities currently are. And the last several episodes, over the last couple of weeks actually, we've been going in depth about North Star statements and why, and making sure that we are solidifying those and that we are we're aligning our behaviors with all of those things, because that really is what sets us on that path that becomes automatic. When we are aligned and we put those procedures, we put that structure there, then it becomes almost a no-brainer, and we fall into that path and we get going. So making sure that we understand this is a very important part of our process. So why is it? And I've already talked about a little bit about why it's important for us to understand that life changes will happen. So why is flexibility a key? And that's what we're really talking about, being flexible and adjusting. We've talked about resistance, right? That ability to plant your feet and say, yeah, come hell or high water, we're heading in this direction. We've talked about resilience, which is the ability to bounce back when we get knocked down. And this one is about being flexible. So one of the most amazing things to me, living in the area where we live, is that we have storms that come through, and a lot of you have storms as well. But sometimes I'll be walking after a storm, and I'll look around, and I'll see trees, and there'll be this big, massive tree that I thought for sure this tree is going to be here forever. It is not coming down. And there'll be a little flimsy tree next to it somewhere that I'm like, okay, that one's going to get knocked over. And I'll come back, and guess what? The big, massive tree, it's split and fallen over. And the little tree, the little one that I thought was going to be gone, the little one that is that doesn't seem to have much, that tree is still there. And I've often wondered why that is. And what I've learned is that that big tree was not flexible. It was solid, it was strong, but it was not flexible. And that little tree, when the wind blew, it swayed, right? And it moved. And it gave a little bit on this side and gave a little bit on that side. And the wind just blew over it, and it stayed standing. Now, it was a little buffeted, right? So it was knocked around a bit, but it's still up. But the tree that was not able to flex, the tree that was not able to give over here and give over there and twist a little bit, that tree now is split and down. Sometimes we got to chop it down, or sometimes it actually comes down on its own. But that's one of the benefits of this idea of flexibility, that you are able to bend and change with the changes in your environment. Okay? So there are a lot of things that are going to come, and so that's why flexibility is important. So most people create a plan, and they expect life to just go along. It's like life is just going to bend its way to do whatever I want it to do. And while there is a place for planning, because if you don't plan, you plan to fail, there is a place for planning, there also has to be a place to understand that, yeah, your life is going to be life. And life is going to work the way life is going to work. And your plan has to fit in that, and your plan has to be able to flex, has to be able to change, and has to be able to work, because life can be very unpredictable. I know this. I know this firsthand. So when unexpected changes happen and you don't plan, when you don't have a plan for it, it leads to an emergency. One of my favorite financial speakers always says that when we don't have an emergency plan, when we don't have a plan for the unexpected, then that unexpected becomes an emergency. It's kind of like, here's a silly example. So you have a car, and the car is going to need an oil change. The car may need some tires. But if we never plan to have money for the oil change, when the oil change is needed, it becomes an emergency. Now we've got to divert funds from other places. Now, I'm going to pick a silly example, right? Silly number. Let's assume the oil change costs $50. That's what it's going to be. And we know that that oil change has to happen, I don't know, maybe a year from now. That's a long time, but that's okay. We're going to use a year. Say it has to happen a year from now. We can wait until that time to find $50, right? Or we can begin now saving $1. Maybe we save $1 today, $2 tomorrow, next week $3, we put it away, $1 a day. And if we do that, then when that year reaches, when it's time, and we've got to provide that $50, then the $50 is available. Otherwise, at the time when it's needed, now we're trying to figure out, well, where do I get $50? Well, we've got rent that's due. We've got this bill that's due. We've got this other thing that's due. And because we did not plan for it, then that now becomes an emergency for us. And we got to figure out, like right now, where do we get $50 from? So that is the same thing that happens in life. There are things that are going on, and if we are careful, if we continue to set a plan that includes an emergency plan, then we are able to be flexible. We're able to pick up on that and get into that plan, that part of the plan. And it's not such an emergency. It doesn't throw life off. So success comes from adjusting and being flexible. It comes from being able to, cars going by. It comes from being able to stay committed while still being open to changes that life will send to us. And it will send you some stuff, right? You guys know that. Life is like, okay, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. You can make your plan all you want, but I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. So let's talk about three processes, a three-step process for adapting your plan. Adapting your plan. Now, what do you think the very first part of that's gonna be? It is, once again, to go back to that North Star statement. Understand what your true intention, what your true reason is for what you're doing. What is the thing, what is the tenure of my life? Now, here's the thing, and I'm gonna make a point here. This is a point that I make a lot with my medical students, with the students that rotate to the office. I tell them that there are a lot of things that you can do in your life and be happy with. Should I go this way? I'm on my campus here. All right, there are a lot of careers that you could do and be happy with. I'm gonna pause there. Now, are there things that you are much better at? Yep. Are there things that are like you light up when you hear about them? Yep. But are there other things that you can do and be happy with, successful at, competent at, fulfilled at? Yep, there are. There it is. So when you're talking about your goal, when you're talking about the thing, right, that North Star statement, and I'm looking up and holding up my hands. When you talk about that North Star statement, the North Star statement is the tenure of your life. But as you've learned, how you get there is a process. That changes. That can be one thing today and be something totally different tomorrow. That doesn't mean that the process is wrong. It just means that we got there a different way. So as life is changing, as life is throwing things at you, maybe your North Star statement shifts a little bit. Maybe it does. But also the process of getting there can change. And that is of paramount importance. The next step is recognizing when change is needed. There's nothing like staying at a place longer than you need to and longer than you should. There are circumstances, as I've just said, that will necessitate a change. And sometimes because we don't anticipate it, or sometimes because we are so busy kind of hitting our head against a wall that we don't recognize when it's time to pivot, when it's time to change. When something happens, an illness, age change, maybe a change in life circumstances, pregnancy, childbirth, marriage, change of city, change of job, downsizing, any of those things, when they happen, that is a perfect time to actually begin evaluating to see whether it is necessary for me to change. And sometimes because we don't recognize that it's time to change, we end up wasting time, we end up frustrated, and that can actually cause us to give up because we're like, well, things aren't working. I guess this must not be for me. So making sure that you can recognize when change is needed. So the second step is to acknowledge when your current approach isn't working. When the current circumstance doesn't allow me to continue doing what I need to do. So here's some signs. Number one, your schedule or responsibilities have changed. Makes sense. Begin evaluating. My schedule has changed. I can no longer attend that meeting because something in the family has changed. I've got to take mom to the hospital. I've got to drop the kids to school now. I've got to pick the kids up for school. I've got, whatever it is, your schedule has changed, your life has changed, and it said to you, hey, you gotta make some adjustments. Right, so number one, when you have changes. So your current plans feel overwhelming or unsuitable to where you are. You're doing it, you're digging in, you're rested, you're taking time off, you're celebrating, you're doing all the keystone things we talked about, but it just seems like this path is just more arduous, more difficult. It's time to evaluate. And that may be that, okay, now I've got to change, I've got to pivot. Maybe I've got to change this plan. I've got to change how I get there. I've got to change the things I'm bringing to bear to solve this problem. And you've hit a plateau. Maybe you need a plateau. Maybe you need a new challenge. So your weight's been going down and you've been losing that half a pound to 1 pound a week. And boom, 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 it's going. And all of a sudden, the last 12 weeks, I won't say 12, because by then we should be doing something. The last 4 or 5 weeks, nothing has happened. So maybe it's time to adjust what we're doing and say, hey, is there time that we need to change? So adopting doesn't mean failure. Ooh. Adopting, or adapting, sorry, I said adopting, thinking about kids. So adapting does not mean failure. But often we equate changing, right, adapting to failure. And it does not mean that at all. It simply means that you are pivoting. It means you're growing and that you're learning. And it doesn't mean you're avoiding stuff, right? Sometimes that comes to our mind as well. Doesn't mean that we're avoiding, right? So understand the why. Look at that North Star statement. understand when it's time that we need to change, when we need to pivot, and then adjust our plans, not our goal. The North Star statement is still there. It is where I'm heading. If you've evaluated and that's the case, yeah, okay, it's still there, but my circumstance has changed. How do I now, what do I need to do? What do I need to adapt so that I can keep moving in that same direction to get to where I need to go, even though my plan, the procedures, the technical part of it, the structure maybe has changed. What do I need to do? That's the key. But what happens sometimes is we scrap the plan, we scrap the goal, we scrap the destination. We're like, oh, okay, now I gotta take the kids to work, I can't exercise. Well, no. You can go to bed earlier and get up earlier, and you can still go walking, right? So that's an important point that you want to make sure that you understand. So some questions that you want to ask yourself is, what are the core outcomes that I still want? What are the core things of that destination where I was heading that I say, hey, I still need that. That's still my North Star. And then how do I get those? Maybe some things may have to go away. Some things may have to fall away because I don't need those anymore. But for this one, yeah, this is still what I not want. What are alternative ways to reach it? As I'm moving, the destination is still there. It's kind of like me trying to get to, when we were in London and Paris, there's this app that we use. So you plugged in where you wanted to go, and it's kind of like MapQuest. But in that case, they told us we had to walk 5 minutes to this bus station. We had to catch the number 3 bus, and we take that bus over to this train station, and then we take that train, and we get to our destination, then you have to walk 2 minutes. So it gave us a path. But in the path, in the list, there were several ways to get there. Like one was take a cab, right? Just call, it takes you 15 minutes. Or another one was if you walk, instead of walking 5 minutes to the bus, if you walk 7 minutes, you can actually get to the train station, and that negates the need to take the bus. But all of those are things that we would not understand if we did not take the time to evaluate where we were and to understand that adapting is actually a good thing when we need to. So what are some alternative ways to reach that same destination? Another question is, what are some realistic ways, right? What are some realistic ways of still achieving this goal? Now, there's some unrealistic ways, yeah, certainly. But what are some realistic ways based on my current circumstance, based on my current situation? I had a guy who was a runner, and he was, when I say runner, he ran marathons, he did triathlons, I think he did a couple of Ironmen, and he actually had a heart attack. And he could not, with the same level of intensity, do what he needed to do. And so he became depressed. Because that happens, right? Because you can't you think, oh, I should be able to do this. And so we kind of worked with him for him to understand that his circumstance has changed. And his goal was to kind of maintain his physical form, right? Because he was cut and, yeah, you know. And so a big part of it was his running. So he ran all the time because he said it helped with his lean body mass and, you know, flexibility and all that kind of stuff. Well, so we have to now figure out, well, maybe you can't do the intensity of an Ironman, but you can certainly still do some of the other things. You can still go to the gym. Now, instead of doing the heavy weights you were doing, let's do some reps, right? We can still keep the tone. We can still keep the body mass index down. We can still keep the percent body fat down, right? So there are lots of different ways for us to do that, but that would not have happened if we not taken the time to really evaluate where we were and to figure out what are some realistic, and that's the key word there, what are some realistic ways based on my current situation, right? So the key is there, you don't want to do an hour-long workout, for example. You can't do it anymore. So you shift. Instead of doing an hour long, now you do 2 half-an-hour workouts. One in the morning, one in the afternoon. Nobody says you couldn't do that. But we get so tied up in that 1 hour, right? So you can adjust and you can change. And that is more realistic than where we were before. And then you want to build flexibility into your system. Whatever system we are designing. In fact, if I were to redo the SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, I would just add an F at the end of it for flexibility. Or alternate, or A. What is my alternate plan? So that we understand that we've just created a SMART goal, which is great. But sometimes we get to that T and we're done. We're like, okay, yep, boom, he said do it. I got it, got my plan. And the plan is a great plan, except life. That's all I'm gonna say, except life. This guy like driving down the highway and a trooper stopped you because you're speeding. And you just say, he's like, hey man, do you know how fast you were going? You're like, man, dude, life. And he's like, I understand, okay, take off, just don't speed. Right, because everybody got life happening. Everybody understands that. All I got to say is life. Life just took hold of me. Right, whatever it is. So build it into your plan. Success isn't about perfection. We're talking about progress, not perfection. And so even in our pathway, even in the places that we go, even in the goals that we're setting, even in the structure that we're putting into place, there has to be a plan for flexibility. So let's bring it home. Let's talk about a couple of things, specifics. So we all think that we're going to remain healthy, right? Because that's what we're doing. What happens if you break a leg? What's your plan? What happens if you have a heart attack? What happens if unexpectedly you guys get pregnant? What happens if your job downsizes, right sizes, whatever phrase they're using nowadays? What's going to happen? What's your plan? And begin thinking, and I'm not saying thinking about all of the morbid things, but put a plan in place. If it's a financial thing, how are we going to survive? Which means that limitless living says that now I've got to figure out, I've got to adjust, I've got to look at my finances and say, are we liquid enough to be able to survive if one of us can't work? For a lot of people, the answer is no. And if the answer is no, then that's an emergency if something happens on the job. That's an emergency if you break a leg. It's an emergency if you have a heart attack. Now, it's a big deal, not to negate that. But financially, we're talking financially. But financially, what does that mean? So be able to add those into your, build those into your plan. So use a plan B strategy. Right, what's going to be my plan B? That's number one. Use the minimum effort goal. So what's the minimum effort that I need to still get there? Because there are going to be some times you got to slow down. I can't keep going at the same pace. I can't keep putting the same amount of time in. So what's the minimum time that I need? The minimum number of dollars I need? The minimum effort that I need to still get to my goal? And begin putting that in place. And then check in regularly, right? With yourself, in your journal. You're writing, you're evaluating, you're processing. All of that so important as we are trying to be flexible in our ability to continue going when life throws something at us. So how do we stay flexible when life is unpredictable? Well, this goes back to a lot of the keystone principles. For example, resilience. We've got to develop a resilient mindset. And I'm telling you, that idea of being resilient is challenge, or can be a challenge for many of us, because we are so keyed into things not happening. We're so keyed into it's gonna just all go like it's supposed to go. And so we think negatively, we chastise ourselves, we think we're failures if we have to pivot, if we have to be flexible. But you have to develop a flexible mindset, because man, the longer I live, the more I'm like, yeah, it is what it is. And I've just got to be able to, in that moment, in that time, do what I need to do, right? So you want to make sure that you are developing a mindset. You don't want a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset, this is it. All I can do is right here. And if this doesn't work, then I've got nothing else. So instead of seeing challenges as roadblocks, you want to see them as opportunities. And as we've been talking about, we're no longer seeing them as challenges. Or we won't see them as roadblocks. Let me say it that way. We are going to see them as opportunities and time for us to learn and for time for us to do the things that we need to do. Resilience isn't avoiding problems. It's actually learning how to navigate them. So what does that phrase, that quote, that I'm not failing, I'm either succeeding or I'm learning, right? And then you want to focus on what you can control. The serenity prayer. There's so much that you can't control. The weather, like our weather has been crazy here. I can't control that, but I can control how I walk, when I walk, where I walk. That I can control. And you want to focus your energies on that. You cannot control everything. Yep, you can't. And if you try to, if you think you can, whoa. We got big work to do, right? So control what you can control. One thing I can still do. What's one thing I can still do that's under my power? Let's do that. And then we do the next thing that's under our power. And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and so forth. And then use a pivot plan instead of an all or nothing plan. So it's kind of like boxing, right? Jab and move. So you could stand there and you could keep throwing punches, but guess what? Your opponent knows exactly where you are. And after a while, they'll figure out what you need to do. But you jab and you move. You jab and you move. You jab and you move. And so what you're doing is you're trying to find the best place to throw a punch. You're blocking. You're changing it up, right? So we want to do the jab and move thing, right? It is a pivot process as opposed to an all or none process, because all or none, that's that lack of flexibility, and that's that tree that comes down when it looks like it's going to stand. That's not what we want to be. We want to be the flexible tree. So most people fail because they think they can do everything, they could do anything, and nothing is going to throw them off. Now you now understand that that's not the case. You understand that that's not how it's going to go. Right? If you can't stick to your full plan, what's the minimum I need to do? That's the important question that you want to ask. Once again, one of those conversations, right? This is a good one. So we can't go anywhere without a challenge. So go ahead and grab your journal. Grab the journal, because we're going to write. And here's your challenge. What we're doing is we're creating an adoption plan. Adaption. I keep saying adoption. Right? Identify. This is number one. Identify one area where your life has changed since you started this journey. So in a bigger context, yes, but also in the context of our 100-day walk. So we are on day 84 right now. So what is one place where your life has changed? Maybe your schedule has changed. Maybe your energy has changed. Maybe your goals have changed. Maybe your mindset has changed. What's one area where life has changed? What aspect of your plan no longer fit that? Yeah. What's it going to be? Which part of your plan has to be adjusted because that something has changed and I can no longer do what I said I was going to do. I need to pivot. Then adjust your plan without changing your goal. Now, the goal is still there. The North Star statement is still there. But what can I do here as I'm going, as I'm moving, as I'm going through that plan? What can I do here that still gets me there, but it's different from what I planned? What's a new strategy that allows me to get there, but still change how I get there? And then number 3, set a plan B for busy or unexpected days. So one of the places where life changes is the busyness, right? So we've got a rhythm that we go through, and then all of a sudden something gets thrown in there, and we've got to adjust. And if we're not careful, we find out that, hey, yeah, I keep trying to be as busy, or I keep trying to go at the same pace, but I can't do that. Maybe I got to cut something out that helps me, or I got to pick up my pace. Something has to change, right? So what's your plan B? What's your plan B? Great conversation, y'all. Great, great, great conversation. This is a good one, and it is one of my favorites. Keystones, keystones, keystones. Well, thank you for joining me. This is day 84 of our 100-day walk to consistency and health. And you've made it this far. Let me say that. I'm going to pause. You've made it this far. That is a feat. And I'm so proud of you for sticking in there, because every day that you show up, every time you say yes, every time you push through, you are creating a newer version of yourself, stronger version of yourself, more self-sufficient and more resilient version of yourself, more self-confident for sure. You can do it. Thank you for joining me on my 100-day walk to consistency. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. We're creating the life we've always wanted. I'll see you tomorrow on day number 85. I'll see you on the walk.